When you make the decision to become an active trader, when you decide you want to take control of your financial future and actively trade stocks, options, futures, you have to pay attention to what is going on in the market. You have to be aware of what's going on in the market every single day. What is driving the market's movement? Well, if the market is up today, why is it up? The market's down today, why is it down? You need to know what the major components of the market are. For example, what are the major top 10 stocks in the S&P 500? Do you know this? If you don't, you probably should. These are stocks you probably should follow. Do you know what gold futures are doing today? Because if you don't, that's a problem, especially if you trade gold mining stocks. Do you know what the oil futures are doing today? That's a problem, especially if you trade oil company stocks. You need to follow some of the major futures products. You need to know what's going on with some of the market indices, and you need to know what's going on with the gigantic companies that really drive the market. So we're talking about companies like Apple, Microsoft. Right now, Nvidia, of course, is really moving the markets around. And one of the most important things that you can do to have more market awareness is to create a market watch list. Create a watch list of the major indices, futures products, and some of the most important stocks as far as like the big trillion-dollar corporations that really drive the markets up and down each day. Have a watch list of about 40 or 50 of these major products and actually briefly glance at them each day. That way you track what's going on each and every day in these products. Again, that gives you a little bit more of awareness of what's going on in the broader market. So today's topic is creating your watch list. Each and every one of you need to create trading watch lists. These watch lists, they need to help you, again, become more aware of the market. You need to know what is moving the market each and every day, and these watch lists will help. So you should know what the major indices are doing. When we talk about market indices, we're talking about the index products. So we're talking about the S&P 500, we're talking about the NASDAQ 100, we're talking about the Russell 2000, we're talking about the Dow 30, and you could also include VIX, which is the volatility index. It's the volatility of the S&P 500. And really those 5 major indices, you need to know what's going on with them. You also need to monitor the futures products as well, at least the major futures. Now there's hundreds of futures products out there. Many of them are kind of obscure and don't trade much, but the big ones that you need to know about as far as the futures products are those index futures products. For example, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, they have futures products. You should monitor those. You should also monitor oil futures, gold futures, silver futures, Bitcoin futures, bond futures. You should know what all of those major products are doing, because those products actually affect what goes on in the equity markets. And most of you guys I know are trading stocks or stock options. And a lot of what goes on in those equity markets depend on what's going on in some of those future markets that you're probably not even bothering to monitor. And again, you really should. Now, when we talk about having market awareness, again, that doesn't mean that you need to sit there and spend hours every day monitoring market movement and watching financial news. I don't do that, right? But you should dedicate at least 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes each day to this task. So most of you guys, if you're actively trading, you're probably going to spend at least 30 minutes every day in front of your trading platform, especially at the open, right? When the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Central Time here in the US where I'm at, at 8:30, I'm going to definitely be in front of my computer for the opening bell, because that's when most of the action happens. It's in that first 30 minutes to that first hour that the market is open. That's when most people are trading. That's going to be the most liquidity. That's going to have the most action. So if you're going to dedicate 30 to 60 minutes of your time being there for that first hour of the day, that first hour of the day should also be when you start monitoring some of those watch lists you create. You should know, again, what all those major futures products are doing. You should know what the top 10 stocks in the NASDAQ are doing, the top 10 stocks in the S&P are doing. One thing I often do is pre-market. Pre-market is before the market opens. So again, 8:30 a.m. Central Time, my time. So I get actually to my computer at least 30 minutes before that, because before the market actually opens, I want to already have a heads up on what's about to happen. So pre-market, I start looking at some of the major headlines on financial news sites like Yahoo Finance or Market Watch, etc. So they'll all have news stories pre-market about the stocks that are going to make big moves that day, probably because of earnings or some kind of announcements and things like that. They're going to tell you about economic economic events, macroeconomic events that are happening as far as certain announcements like GDP or jobs reports, things like that. And really spending just about 5 or 10 minutes just, seeing these pre-market news articles from these sites, they really give you a good heads up of what's about to happen when the market opens. So you know which stocks are going to be in play that day. A great way to help streamline this daily task of having market awareness is to create a watch list of certain indices, futures, and stocks. So let's talk about creating your watch list. And let's first talk about the futures. So in your trading platform, especially if you're using something like TASTYTRADE or Thinkorswim or whatever it happens to be, they all have watch lists, and you can create your own watch list. Go ahead and create your very first watch list. The very first thing you need to add, you must monitor the stock index futures. So the major indices, their futures products, we need to monitor the /ES, the /NQ, the /RTY, and the /YM. These are the S&P 500 futures, the NASDAQ futures, the Russell 2000 futures, and the Dow 30 futures. Next up, also add either the VIX or the /VX futures. So VIX is the volatility index. It's the volatility of the S&P 500. /VX is the VIX futures. So they're very similar products. One's an index, one's a futures product, but they essentially give you a good gauge of the volatility of the S&P 500. And, if volatility is up that day, that tells you there's a little bit of fear and uncertainty in the equity markets. There could be some big two-way action, and especially there could be some big downward pressure on the market if the VIX is up. Now, if VIX is declining, typically that tells you nobody's really scared of anything in the market. So that's the days there where not much happens. They're kind of boring days, or typically, those are the days where the market just slowly kind of drifts up. Others futures products you should add the futures for oil, natural gas, gold, silver, bonds, currencies, all of which can have a major impact on stock prices. So again, just because you don't necessarily trade oil futures, trust me, oil companies, like if you trade oil stocks like Exxon Mobil or Phillips or whatever it happens to be, BP, some of those major oil stocks, they move based on the oil futures. So again, if you one of these people that trade a lot of oil stocks, monitor the oil futures. If you're one of these people that trade a lot of mining stocks, so companies that mine for gold or silver or copper, you might want to monitor gold futures, silver's futures, or copper futures. Next, we need to add some stocks to our watch list. So there are thousands and thousands of stocks out there. 99% of the stocks out there don't matter because they're not very liquid. They're companies that don't really comprise a very big percentage of the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100. We want the big stocks, the really big stocks. So the stocks that are several hundred billions of dollars as far as capitalization, or some of these trillion-dollar companies like Apple and Microsoft and Nvidia, right? These are the largest companies in the world. They are also the largest components of the major index products like the S&P and the NASDAQ. Because of that, you should probably add all of these companies that I listed here. Go ahead and add Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, Nvidia, and Tesla to your watch list. Even if you don't plan on necessarily trading them, or they're not a regular product that you trade, they do move the overall market. All of these companies, when they make big moves, they affect the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. After you add these top companies, then go ahead and add about 25 to 50 other large and liquid companies. Don't put any penny stock garbage. Don't put anything that's really illiquid, that's hard to trade, that barely has any options. You know the signs of a good liquid company. Add 25 to 50 large liquid companies to your daily watch list. Companies that you wouldn't mind trading, companies that interest you, add them to your watch list and start monitoring them every day. Now be careful with your watch list. You don't want to focus only on one sector of the market. For example, while having a watch list of only tech stocks or only energy stocks is useful if you want to specialize in those sectors of the market, for market awareness purposes, you need to have a watch list that is diversified across all sectors, because how can you really gauge what's going on in the broader market if you're only looking at one sector of the market? So make sure on your market awareness watch list, you have stocks from each and every sector of the market. So let me give you an example of a good stock watch list of 30 stocks that are diversified across all sectors of the market. So here are potential stocks to add to your watch list. AAL, which is American Airlines, Apple, AMD, Amazon, Boeing, BA, Bank of America, BAC, C is Citigroup, Coinbase, Costco, Delta Airlines, Disney, Google, GM, JP Morgan, IBM, McDonald's, Meta, Microsoft, Netflix, Nvidia, PayPal, Qualcomm, Royal Caribbean, Starbucks, Shopify, Target, Tesla, United Airlines, Walmart, and ExxonMobil. So you can see I tried to diversify here, right? There are some tech stocks in there, but I mixed in some airlines, some car companies, I mixed in some oil companies, I mixed in some retailers, I mixed up some cruise lines, right? There's a little bit of everything in this watch list. In fact, if you're not sure what to add to a watch list, actually take these 30 stocks from this slide, create a watch list with these 30 stocks, also add the ES futures, the NQ futures, the RTY futures, the YM futures, and the VIX futures. You put those 5 futures products with these stocks, maybe add gold and oil as well. You know, you've got a pretty good watch list that's going to give you a pretty good idea of what's going on in the markets each and every day, as long as you monitor that watch list a little bit each and every day. You don't have to spend hours looking at it each and every day, but you know, every time you think about it when you're in your trading platform, take a look at that market awareness watch list. See what's going on in some of those major products. Now, I think market awareness and watch lists are one of the most important parts of being a trader. That's why in my book, The Super Wheel Option Strategy, I actually have a chapter in that book dedicated to just naming the underlyings. I have a list of ticker symbols. So essentially, if you're unsure about what you should be monitoring as far as products for your watch list, I cover all the major indices, futures, ETFs, the big stocks that you should be monitoring. So again, check out my book, The Super Wheel Option Strategy, available on Amazon. Peace, guys.